Ohio State, Michigan, one of the best rivalries in sports, not just college football. Bitter nemesis. They are opposites in some respects. And so was depicted the difference between Brady Hoke at the podium today at Big Ten Media Days and Urban Meyer. For everything that Brady Hoke did not give us, Urban Meyer laid it all right out there. This was an entertaining, more than that, a very insightful and intriguing 15 minutes for the Ohio State football coach delivering his thoughts and his comments to the media. So let's run them down from Urban Meyer just a few minutes ago. He just stopped talking in Chicago. First of all, the offensive line, a huge disappointment. So we know the Buckeyes had a very strong offensive line. Many of those players going on to the NFL. They lost 4 of 5 starting offensive linemen from last season. A team that led the Big Ten in total offense, scoring offense, one of the top 5 in the nation in both categories, a team that put up 35 points and what could have been more without Braxton Miller interceptions against Clemson. 42 on Michigan, on down the line, produced against just about everybody, the low mark being 24 against Michigan State. Very talented along the offensive line, very strong, very capable, very tenured. So very knowledgeable and skillful up front along the offensive line. And he says the guys that are replacing them right now are not doing the job. They're not showing us what they need, and that is going to be difficult to produce the points because we don't have Hyde in the backfield anymore, and also, more importantly, for the protection of Braxton Miller. That was brought up considerably. So Urban Meyer started the conversation in his opening comments by saying Braxton Miller's in the best shape of his career. But the questions then ensued about his health and staying healthy and what do you expect out of him. And Urban Meyer said that was one of the main concerns about the offensive line. Of course, winning the game, producing the points, producing the yardage, moving the sticks on game day, but keeping your quarterback upright. And you've got no Kenny Guyton behind him. Say what you will about Kenny Guyton. I thought he was a decent backup. I thought he was not the starter, as some people had claimed after the Cal game last season that he should have been the starter. Kenny Guyton was capable in coming in. We saw it a couple years ago in particular against Purdue, and then last season in the first 3 or 4 ball games. The offensive line, Urban Meyer expects it to be first rate, best in the Big Ten, one of the best in the country. It is not right now. You can tell he's very disappointed with the spring session out of the offensive line. He's hearing some good things from the summer camp, but he wants to see it firsthand starting on August 1st. Again, Braxton Miller, best shape of his life. Urban Meyer will always defend Braxton Miller's injury issues as being because he plays so hard, he's so competitive, and he knows that the pressure has to be taken off this quarterback. In 2012, he carried Ohio State offensively to an undefeated season. Last year, Carlos Hyde emerged after the suspension, took some heat off. The wide receivers were better. Braxton Miller could do less last season. Still, the top offensive player in the Big Ten. Now, this season, Urban Meyer wants even more taken off the shoulders of his star quarterback. He talked about the wide receiver play. And it's funny seeing this coach look back to 2012 when at the time he talked about how marginal that team was going through the season and, hey, we're getting better, but we're really not that good. Then they completed the undefeated season with no Big Ten championship game, no bowl game in sight because of the sanctions at 12-0 and said, hey, we're great. This is a great team. And he could say it at that point. They didn't have anything else to prove. They finished 12-0. But looking back, we understand what Urban Meyer has stood on the sidelines and watched at Florida for 5 seasons there, particularly in the championship seasons. Exceptional talent, and also talent that could recruit, that was tenacious, that was smart, that was heady, and he loves a tenacious football team that will not refuse, that will refuse to lose and will give it all it's got. And he's seen it at times at Ohio State, but he's still not satisfied. And he still knows that he doesn't have the talent on the complete roster and depth chart that he wants to have. He's getting there. He's almost there. It's very close, but still spotty at the linebacker core. He talked about it. He expects that to be a huge area of improvement, that the linebacker core was subpar last season and even worse the year before. And, of course, because of injuries, Zach Bourne had to play middle linebacker. He mentioned that. The secondary was atrocious at times last year, and I emphasize atrocious at times. The secondary was still very talented and made plays, but ripped up against Clemson, of course, against Connor Cook in Michigan State, and against Jared Abbrederis. So the secondary has got to get better. He talked about, hey, we just started from scratch. We blew it up. Our new defensive backs coach, Chris Ash, I have put it on him to blow it up and teach these guys how to play and not blow coverages and fight and compete for the football. All right, he talked about the Eastern Division being very strong. The recruiting, he always loves to bring up recruiting, even when it's not mentioned, because he's at the forefront of the Big Ten. Even with what James Franklin's done in the last few months, still Ohio State just pulling in 2 5-star guys recently at the forefront of the Big Ten since Urban Meyer took over, and even before that with Jim Tressel. So he loves to talk recruiting, but giving credit to the rest of the Big Ten for upping the ante. He talks about leadership. That's another staple of Urban Meyer, is that he finds out who's with him and who's against him, and he weeds out the guys that he doesn't think are either mentally tough enough, physically tough enough, or have the character to stay with the program, gut it out, meet all the challenges, exceed the expectations, and win on the field and compete better than anybody in the country. That's what he expects. So he talked about trust, he talked about brotherhood, talked about leadership building, not just for the players, but for the coaching staff, with some new coaches coming in. Talked about the loss of Mike Vrabel to the Houston Texans, and what a tremendous loss that is, but that he expects Larry Johnson, and he's already seen him connect with his players along the defensive front, and that's one place where Ohio State is very, very strong. That's the best unit on the team. Got to be defensive line. Number 2's got to be quarterback, at least that first guy, Braxton Miller. Then after that, wow, maybe wide receiver, but there's questions in the secondary, linebacker, questions obviously along the offensive line, and who's going to run the football. We know the names, Rod Smith, Ezekiel Elliott and company, but are they going to be able to replace the production of Carlos Hyde? Dontre Wilson, an interesting player, because everywhere Urban Meyer goes, and will probably go for the rest of his coaching career, if he goes anywhere else, certainly for the rest of his years at Ohio State, the name Percy Harvin will come up. That guy was the guy, the X factor. The defenses had to account for, that made it all happen on the perimeter for Florida. He's been looking for that guy. Was it Philly Brown? No, Philly Brown was talked about as being that guy, as well as Jordan Hall. Those guys did not compare in any way to Percy Harvin. Hall in no way. Philly Brown turned out to be an exceptional slot receiver in particular and produced well for the Buckeyes, but we see him not being picked up in the NFL. It plays to the guy being a very productive receiver. Give him all the credit in the world. I loved watching Philly Brown at Ohio State, but not an elite talent like a Percy Harvin who's making millions in Seattle. They're looking for that guy. Dontre Wilson's supposed to be that guy. Urban Meyer tried to find spots for him last season, but conceded during last season that this guy is a liability on the field because teams know we're either going to go use him as a weapon or as a decoy. But he's not a blocker. He can't run inside. Urban Meyer expects him to be a more complete football player. He's added pounds, he's added weight, he's added strength. Dontre Wilson's going to be a key member of this offense in 2014. All right, that's pretty much what I've got for Ohio State football, and a lot laid out there in 15 minutes by head coach Urban Meyer. Buckeyes fans, Big Ten fans, college football fans, would love to hear what you have to say about Ohio State and Urban Meyer's quest to win a Big Ten championship in 2014. Right here on Mark Rogers TV.